our objective and our mindset at Moto was always to ask ourselves, okay, this represents 30% of the day of our customer service. How can we automate? And by doing this, you create a culture of automatization. After 3 years of operating the business, we realized that you had automatized like 75% of the tasks that were going to need a human.
Hi, and welcome to Mission Ops Possible, a podcast for and by operation leaders. I am Guillaume, the head of marketing at Forest Admin. At Forest Admin, our team and our solutions are fully dedicated to operations. So we created a podcast fully dedicated to operations too. In each episode, I invite a different operation leader to speak about their vision, their tips, and their stories in the trenches. And on that front, today's guest is not going to disappoint. In this episode, my guest is Antoine Bouttier, co-founder and CEO of Moto. Moto is a hassle-free bike subscription service. Moto's mission is to accelerate the electric bike adoption in our cities. Hello, Antoine, and thank you for joining me on this second episode of Mission Ops Possible. How are you doing today?
Hi, Guillaume. Glad to be here and very excited about this discussion.
Great. Before we speak about Moto, I wanted us to talk about your journey and how it led to the creation of Moto, because I think it's a great story.
Of course. So where to begin? So I started my career in venture capital. Basically the investment funds that invest only in startups. I worked there when the ecosystem was growing in Paris. So it was super interesting. But after 2 years of that, I was really like, I wanted this feeling that I was seeing every day with the entrepreneurs we were working with. And so I decided to join a startup, and I wanted an American one to learn very fast a lot of things because those companies were highly funded. So I joined Bird, which was one of the...
Bird, the scooters, right?
Exactly. Bird, the first company that put scooters in the street that were basically usable by everyone. So it was like quite a story because I discovered the model just walking in the street of Paris. The first company to launch was Lime, actually, which was our biggest competitor.
I remember at the time trying both, so it was very fun to be able to do that.
You remember there was like those weird green objects and then those weird black objects in the street, and everyone was starting using them. So I thought that there was like a beginning of something, a beginning of a revolution in a way. And I met the GM of Bird. So basically in France, it was a team of 2 people, which was crazy because the company had been created like 6 months ago. They already raised $400 million. So just to tell you a bit about the scale. And those guys were only 2 to launch the Parisian market and in the end, the European market. And I was convinced. I joined them and I spent 2.5 years in this company, which was like a real adventure, as you can imagine. So we went, it was very interesting because we went from a team of 3 people to a team of 200 people in 8 months. And in France, because it was what we called a local market, it was only ops guys. It was a big ops team that were managing not only the Parisian market, but as well all of the French markets that I ended launching and developing. Because obviously when you join a team of 3 people, you can imagine you do basically everything. And so we grew the business from 0 scooters to more than around 30,000, something like that. So
30,000 in France or in Europe? Or...
30,000 in France.
Okay.
So if you think about it, it's like basically establishing a business starting from €0 to around 30 million in 6 or 7 months. So the scale was really intense. It was insane. But we had a lot of money, so it made things very easy.
And how did that drive you then to launch Moto?
After 2.5 years working in the mobility space, after 2.5 years witnessing that every time you put those objects, the scooters in the street, people start using them, I started to feel like there was a bigger opportunity. There was really like a revolution was on its way. And I was thinking that Paris was the epicenter of the whole system because for Bird, for the scooter industry, Paris was and still is the biggest market in the world. So I decided to leave Bird and to start a company in the mobility space. So I partnered with one of my former co-workers at Bird. We left the company at the same time. We started working with a third partner, with our CTO right now. And we started thinking about what aspects of this mobility journey we could map and we could work on.
By the way, like I was curious, is it when you're talking about leaving a company which has 30,000 scooters to go and start your own?
At first it feels empty because you can imagine that we had 10 warehouses full of scooters, and then you open yours and the warehouse is like completely empty. We started with only 100 bikes. So it was really like a tiny business. We are basically just like a bike rental company. And we found 2 investors. And so quite quickly, after 6 months of operating this small 100 bikes fleet, we raised money and we launched the business that is Moto today, and we started to scale.
What was the early days at Moto?
Weirdly, the days are very full. So like you arrive in the morning around 9, you leave the office at 8, and you didn't see the day pass through. And we were just like trying to understand our business. That was really our focus. And so we discovered that with the subscription model comes a lot of services that needs to be included in what we did. And you have the repairs, that's super important. So I myself didn't know anything about bikes, basically like how to repair a bike. I learned that in the street.
I think we'll go back to the reparation stuff afterwards.
Yes, I'm sure.
The maintenance and all of that.
And the second big piece is theft. When you operate a fleet of bikes in Paris, well, those bikes get stolen. And when those bikes get stolen, you only have 100 and they're yours and you're only 5 in the company. Well, basically, I myself took my phone with the GPS on it, and I basically followed the guy to try to find the bike and get it back. So
did you?
That I didn't, unfortunately. But that's the kind of story that you encounter when you launch a mobility company.
What was your mission when you launched, and has it changed since?
I wouldn't say it changed, because it's still the same things that motivates me, that motivates the whole team. Is that we want to accelerate the shift towards electric bikes. So we want to help people to adopt this way of transportation that is healthy, sustainable, and that makes a lot of sense in big cities like Paris, for instance. So it's the same mission. The way that we envision it and the way that we operate the model has changed, but the mission is still the same.
And so it's interesting also because you have a different model than the one you have with Bird.
Exactly.
Business model is a subscription, I think.
Business model is only subscription. So people don't get to buy the products that we distribute, or they don't get to pay as a service as they used to do with Bird or with Lime. You basically subscribe to our service. You get your own bike. You don't share it with anyone. And on top of that, you get a lot of services like insurance, theft management, or even repair providers. Like we provide you with a solution when you have to repair your bike.
And just to give us an order of magnitude, like how many people are you now at Moto? How many users? How many bikes?
So we are very focused on profitability. So we managed to keep the team at a human level. So currently we're a team of 15 people. 15 people that are like objectively passionate by the space, like they love the space. And those 15 people manage a fleet of more than 2,500 bikes with 2,000 users. Okay. So that makes us the second biggest fleet in the Paris area, private fleet, just after our main competitor, that's Dance.
It's going to drive us straight into the topic that we have for this podcast about operation, which is how you manage all of that with a team of 15 people. Obviously,
that's a great question. So one thing that is to me very insightful is that at one point we had maybe like half the bikes we have right now, and we were twice the people that we are right now.
4 times the ratio.
Exactly. So you can imagine. And back in those days, we thought that it was the only way to grow the business. Like when you scale the business, you scale the team. And our DNA at Moto is very ops-centric. That's, I think, a heritage from Bird, which was a very ops-centric company. So when we started to scale the business, when we reached our first 500 bikes and then 1,000 bikes, we basically hired people to be specialists on certain types of problems or certain types of services. And along the way, we realized that with a strong tech team, that's what we had since the beginning. It has always been the second team in terms of size of the company. When you put the tech team and the ops team very close, basically in the same room, and they get to talk every day on the problems that our users have, that our team have, you create this like synergy that is very healthy. And basically, for the first 2 years of the company, the tech just launched one product for the users, that was the app. And then it was 100% features for the ops team. And that allowed us to basically identify that this business can run itself. You don't need a lot of people to operate a big fleet. And the only way to do that is through technology.
Right. So you have technology, but since you're also, I would say, like a hardware company, you also have this e-bike component. How would you deal with that? Because I think it's one part which is hard to scale. And I think you mentioned you've changed your approach on that as well.
We started Moto with this huge conviction that we were creating a new space, the subscription area, basically. We were like one of the first companies to offer a service like that. So to be even more powerful, we needed our own brand, obviously, and our own bikes. So for the first 18 months, we designed and manufactured our own bikes. So we were like a proper hardware company. But after 18 months of that, we realized that first, you need a lot of expertise to do that, which we had in the team. But this expertise was obviously costly, and there was a lot of issues and investments that were required to keep the fleet at the same level while growing the business. So we started to talk with other bike brands that were very interested in the subscription model, that were basically witnessing what we had done in the last 2 years, and were like, okay, those guys are onto something. We want to participate, but we don't want to launch our own subscription service. So we started to work with those companies, and we are now basically a platform that allows any bike brands. We are mostly working with French brands right now to put their fleet on our system, and we distribute their bikes through the subscription service. So we are less and less a hardware company and more a software company that is a platform to distribute hardware products that are e-bikes.
Okay, that makes total sense. Can we speak 2 seconds also about the services that you offer? And it's not just the e-bike, right?
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at our business, people come to us for one thing, they want a bike. And if you look closer, people stay with us for one thing, it's the service. So when you subscribe to Moto, you get to choose your bike, you get to choose whether or not you want to be committed with us, and then you add a layer of service. This service is mainly 2 things. First level is full insurance that protects you, because you don't know what can happen, but we know that you might encounter some issues like theft. And secondly, the second level of service is we equip your bike with a GPS chip that allows us and the police to track the bike when it's stolen and to get it back. So that's a real protection for the subscriber. And we believe that it helps people to be more comfortable and with less stress on their on a daily basis with their bike.
Do you have stories about exactly what happens with theft? Because you mentioned that it's a big problem, especially in big cities like in Paris. And you must have crazy stories. What's your craziest of them all?
That's a question we get a lot. Obviously, as you said, it's a
That
problem
must
that
be good PR as well. Like you can go to the journalist and tell your stories about stuff.
exactly, like
Get
people
easy
love
PR
to
with
hear
that.
that. I was
Yeah.
like recently I had a TV show producer that asked us whether or not it was interesting to maybe think about a show that was dedicated to us getting back our bikes. So
Amazing.
it's really something.
The
So
e-bike theft on Netflix now.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's a big problem in every European cities. I think in Paris, it's an issue that is maybe not addressed. It's weird because the CTO is working a lot on this topic of putting more people on bikes, and
Mm.
then you have like this hole, this black hole, where basically like you get a lot of bikes stolen. So we equip ourselves since day one with a team that's both intern and partners, like transportation companies and security companies, and we can dispatch them onto stolen bikes. And when the situation is a bit like risky, we work with the police. And we are very lucky because on that aspect, I can only say that the Parisian and Lyon police is really working with us to lower the theft rate. And
Good
so,
to know, right?
yeah, definitely. Yes, that's good to know. If you have a chip on your bike, the police will move. And
Good.
so the weirdest story was one day we were like basically on a hunt after a bike that was stolen, and the GPS chip has it's not only a GPS chip, it has also an alarm. So basically, when we are on location, we don't find the bikes in the street, we activate the alarm and we see what happens. And we were like locating the bike in a building. Obviously, we didn't know where in the building, and we were keeping like the alarm on and on and on, and we were hearing it. And at one point, we saw just like a bike going through a window, like out of the building. So the guy just wanted to get rid of the bike because he realized that first there was a police like in the street, and then the thing was like ringing like crazy, and he just like
Yeah.
threw the
Well,
bike through
I'm
the window.
laughing at it. It's funny, but it's a good thing also. Like nobody got hurt by the falling bike.
It was the first floor, so I'd say that
Good.
the bike got damaged, but we got it back, so it was worth it.
All right. I'm always impressed also when I'm speaking to CEOs like you or COOs who have, and I think especially in European startups, it's not like we throwing cash or people at a problem, but we're trying to come up with more engineered solution often. And I think speaking with you to prepare this podcast, this really came through. And so I want to ask, how you do that, how you manage your operation, how you manage to keep that quality of service with a small team, and how you approach it in terms of, thinking about it, and then exactly what you put in place to get there.
Yeah, no, actually, you're right. Back in my days at Bird, whenever we had a problem, we were literally throwing cash at it, and you fix it. So, as I said, the DNA of Moto is ops. So myself, I was managing the ops for the first 18 months of the company. So I worked on every single topic that we're addressing, and those topics are still the same today. So I would say that first, it's really a work about the details. Like you need to understand your business, you need to understand what your customers really want and where your business can offer something that is valuable versus something that you will like basically burn a lot of cash or maybe like need to hire a big team to deliver something that is not valued by the customers. So that's the first thing. I'd say that it's very important that you see the ops as a extension of the marketing in a way, because those two have to work together to create something interesting. And then secondly, you need to track everything. Clearly, we are obsessed with tracking the data about our ops. We know how much costs a repair. We know how much costs theft. We know how many people we have that don't pay their subscription on a monthly basis. Those things are crucial to the business. I'm sure I'm not like teaching this to anyone, but it's very important. And third, I would say that it's very important at first to have ratios of how many basically how many tasks should one full-time employee do to make the business work. And this ratio should constantly be challenged. Like for instance, as an illustration of that, when we started Moto, we reached our 450 bikes in the street, and that was the ratio that we established for our customer service. We were saying every 450 bikes, we need to hire someone. And today, as I was telling you, we have 2,500 bikes, and we still have one people at the customer service. So,
and how do you manage that? How do you get to that point?
Very easy. We do that on every job and every expertise that we have at Moto. We talk a lot. We exchange a lot about what's a typical day in your week and what things you do the most in your day, what makes you lose time, on what do you spend your time in the day. And when you do that, you realize that you can divide the day in big chunks. And our objective and our mindset at Moto was always to ask ourselves with my business partner, PIF or CTO, okay, this represents 30% of the day of our customer service. How can we automate? And by doing this, you create a culture of automatization that's very important. After 3 years of operating the business, we realized that you had automatized maybe like 75% of the tasks that at first you were thinking that we're going to need a human. That's a logic that we are like constantly working on and constantly using on a daily basis.
When you're talking about automating, I think there is clearly all the infrastructure that goes behind it in terms of tooling, or which platforms do you use. And I'm not asking that because I'm from Forest Admin only, but I know that.
Come on, I think you do.
Yeah, I want to hear nice things about Forest Admin now. But more seriously, I think you cannot automate without the right tools. And I think you said a lot of things to me when we were preparing for this, where I felt like just this point could be a podcast in itself,
Yeah, no, definitely. You're completely right. That's also why we needed VC money at one point, because it allowed us to test a lot of tools and to design this whole tech infrastructure. Maybe without this VC money, things would have been different. So I'd say that because we chose Forest, as I said, on the first day, we built our backend on Forest. Our ops team started using Forest on a daily basis. And clearly, we worked on the tool so like many times and with so many different use cases that we are now managing 100% of our bikes on Forest, 100% of our users on Forest, and we even connected Forest to Stripe to be able to refund a customer or see like the financial account of this customer, the number of coupons that he or she had in the past. So it's really like it became our main dashboard. And as you said, clearly, when I was talking about identifying the chunks that basically you spend a lot of time on, you need a tech solution to track, and then you need a tech solution to provide you with a solution, right? Like, for example, we realized at one point that most riders were getting in touch with us because they had a problem with their bikes. Clearly, if we wanted to scale the business, we needed to address that. And that's when the tech team developed a diagnosis tool right in the app that was connected to Forest and that allows any users to describe the problem they have. And it's directly connected to Forest, so our ops team and our customer service team can see the meeting directly on our dashboard. So it made things like very easy. The customer service team does not need to look at the repairs of any riders. Like it's been completely automatized.
Okay, great. I think it's interesting what you say here also in terms of being able to have the right data and share that data where it matters. And something we did not speak about before, but collaboration between teams. I think you said no. Ops is working a lot with tech, Ops is working a lot with marketing, and now you're taking this to support as well. And I think that's key to have the tool that enables this data sync and also this collaboration. And that brings me to another subject, which is the knowledge base. And something you said to me, I want to quote it because it's such a great quote. You said, the knowledge base is like a sea serpent. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's an expression that I use a lot internally. A sea serpent is basically something that everyone knows that you need to address it. Everyone wants to address it at one point, and you never really do. So, like in pure English, it's like when you say there's an elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say that with the knowledge base, when you think about your ops team and the organization, what you need to scale the business is that anyone has the same level of knowledge. No matter you're in the business since the last 3 years and you've been here through the many experiences that we've done, or you just arrived last week, you need the same level. Otherwise, clearly you have discrepancy and you lose efficiency. So you need to build this proper the knowledge base that's very that should be both updated, useful, and used. And if you want those three things, I mean, it takes a lot of discipline. And I realized all along my career that basically when you think about it, when you scale a big business, you need a gatekeeper, right? Someone who is owner of this thing. And at Moto, we had troubles making sure that this knowledge base was always updated, was always including the new bikes, the new type of repairs, the new processes with the police and stuff. And what we did recently, I mean, since the last 8 months, we started working with a GPT. So through ChatGPT, we basically put all of our knowledge base on it. And every time someone is updating it, does the same to make sure that the last version we have is constantly challenged by the model, and the model learns from itself to be able to tell you, okay, be careful because within when you compare the two processes that address more or less the same problem, you have a discrepancy. It's weird. You maybe there's something that you should be looking at. And by doing that, we gained a lot of efficiency, and we get as well a lot of knowledge because people are sure that when they look at a process, they can trust it. And I think building this trust is the key to have an efficient knowledge base.
Yeah, I think it's great here. And I want to pause and repeat it and maybe even go further than that, because I think that's something I've not heard somewhere else. I've heard people saying we have this problem with knowledge base. I think everybody has this problem. Then picking someone in the team that they kind of promote and they will take care of the knowledge base because it's such a key part of delivering great service. But I think also you get people who use the knowledge base to feed AI so that takes care of level 1 type of tickets or whatever. But I think your approach was really unique in terms of ChatGPT is going to be our gatekeeper, as you say, and is going to tell us when something there is not right. And I don't know if you want to share a bit more about your how you came up with the idea and how you implemented it, but I think it's a great learning for the ops community that we're trying to touch with this podcast.
You have this noise, and we were thinking internally okay, keeping the knowledge base updated means reading all of the articles, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month. And so it's something that no one wants to do. So you can you can maybe find someone who's willing to do it, but he's not going to do it for a year. So I was thinking about that, and I was experiencing on my daily usage of ChatGPT or Le Chat, if we want to talk about a French software, because it works with both services. And I just realized that I was using it for the things I didn't want to do, and so we started talking with our director of ops, and it just popped up just like that. It was our eureka moment, and we were like, okay, so the AI will scan everything and tells us where there is a problem or where something is not updated, and that made a lot of sense, and we're using it. And I have to say that the life of the team is easier now.
It's great. And one last question about this is you are feeding the the knowledge base on a regular basis, ChatGPT, or is it running not constantly, but every time there is an update? What's the exact process you've set up there?
Yeah, no, it's so we want to like fully automatize it. So we want it to be like basically running on its own. But right now, the process is that when someone updates it, then they upload it on GPT, and then we have this result of saying, okay, like this update is like right on track, or careful, the information that you just inputted in the document doesn't match the 2 or 3 processes that we had on this topic. So you might want to update those, or you might want to change the things that you just added. So it's manual right now, but we wanna go a step forward and get more automatized.
Yeah, so you're gonna catch the slippery sea serpent, right?
Exactly. Finally.
Yeah. So maybe the last topic for me today is we've talked about the different teams, about how you manage capacity of everyone in your team. I wanted to ask you, how you recruit, how you retain and develop people in ops, because that's a tough job, and it's often not recognized, and like how you keep people in this kind of roles.
Yeah, that's I think it's a real question. It's a real challenge. You don't see a lot of ops people staying in their job very long, because clearly, as you said, like your daily life is to extinguish fires. And when you scale, you have different fires to extinguish, like along the weeks, along the months. But at the end of the day, it's still like, that in your week, you're going to have at least 1 or 2 problems to handle. And that can be like, you can have a fatigue from that, right?
Yeah.
What we do with managing the efforts of the team requires people that are like fully committed and fully engaged with what we do. And we do that by helping and making sure that people grow into their role. So we've been pretty lucky in that sense, in the way that the business is growing and some aspects of the business are growing as well. We have an example of mainly our ops director. So the guy who's like running everything related to ops, which is the biggest part of our budget and clearly the biggest impact on our business, is someone that started with us as an intern with a dedicated task that was helping the customer service by creating chatbots in Intercom. And then the project evolved into managing the customer service, because by building this automation tool, he just like got everything to understand our business regarding customer service. And then the business grew into this big like repair machine, and we had to make sure that the repair team was working alongside the customer service. He was the right people to lead the effort on this matching moment. And constantly we had those new projects and those new topics, and he started to manage all of those things. And after 3 years, he's now director of ops. And we are trying to adapt and to do the same with every member of the team by really like helping them grow. And I think the key is not to hire too fast. If every time you have an issue, you hire someone, you will break, or you will create a ceiling for your team. And in ops, that doesn't work, because people want to like have more responsibilities and be even like, challenged more and more every day. So I will say that the key to that is don't hire too much and work with external people for a moment until you're sure, like 100% sure that someone in your team can't do it.
Great. Thanks. I'm just looking at the clock as well. It's always a pleasure to speak to people, but I have to look at the clock, and I know you have a meeting afterwards too. So any final thoughts, any tips, anything that you have learned that could help?
Because we're talking to ops people, I think what's very important, and what I've like basically validated like along those last 10 years, is that never block yourself in the perimeter that you have. If you have to handle a problem that has been handled with this specific way over the last 5 years in your company, it doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it. If you've been handling a problem or a situation since the last 18 months and the business has doubled in size, you need to enlarge your perimeter, enlarge the scale of our vision, and think about new ways. I think, to me at least, it has always been how we've been like succeeding in like reaching the next level, is when we basically take everything we built and we destroy everything and we rebuild it.
Awesome. I think that's that's the job of ops summarized. You know, it's
Yes,
almost like
exactly.
a Sisyphus walking with his stone up to the top of the mountain every day.
Yeah, it's
And
a very
finding a
good
new way to
comparison.
push that stone every day. You know.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thanks a lot, Antoine. It's been great. To me, I think there were a lot of good
Yeah,
things we
likewise.
could learn and a few good stories on the way. So that's how I want this podcast to be. So thank you again.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Guillaume. Thank you.
And
Thank you for the invitation.
thank you very much. In French, we'll say bonne route to a moto.
Merci beaucoup.